What is going on, guys? Dobrunsky here, and I have a question for you guys. Have you ever noticed that there is specific builds that you will see used over and over again in Diablo 2 to magic find certain locations or perform specific tasks? Well, if the answer is yes, you are not alone. There is certain meta builds in Diablo 2 that you will always see used over and over again because they are just far better than any other class or build spec in the game. And there is a reason for that, and today I'm going to be counting down what I think are those top 5 builds, talk about why they excel, as well as some specific gear choices that are often used on these character builds. Guys, hope you enjoy this video. Let's jump in. Before we take a look at my list for the top 5 meta builds in Diablo 2, there is 2 key points that I just want to quickly touch on. The first is that I just want to let you guys know, my YouTube subscribers, that all of my future live streams, Diablo 2 and variety live streams, will be taking place on Twitch. The link for my Twitch channel, it's in the description below. If you guys could give me a follow there, I'd really appreciate it. And all of my edited Diablo 2 and video content will be posted here. So streaming on Twitch and videos on YouTube. And the second point is that while I am going to go over some of the common reasons why these characters are so effective and some of the specific like meta in-slot gear choices for these meta builds, there's double meta there, it's really hard for me to go over every possible gear option, so just keep that in mind when I'm breaking down these characters, that I'm not going to cover every single possible option. If you guys think I missed anything major, feel free to let me know in the comment section below. So the first character that makes my top 5 meta list, you guys are probably already anticipating what I'm going to say. It is, of course, the Smiter. I do not know how the Smiter would not make any meta Diablo 2 build list ever. It is the #1 farming Ubers character, whether you're using early trap gear or endgame top tier gear. It is always the best choice for farming Ubers. What makes this character so effective? Well, really, there's a lot of reasons. 1, it's easy to stack resistances. 2, you have a combination of support auras that you can use. So like resist fire, resist lightning to boost your maximum res, salvation for temporary resistance improvement, fanaticism to increase the attack rate of smite. You just have a lot of support auras to help you out. Also, smite never misses. This is huge if you've ever tried doing Ubers with like a frenzy barbarian or something and you stack dual angelics and plus AR charms. You never miss with smite versus having like a 70% chance to hit with like 40,000 attack rating. It's a huge difference, and it's the reason why you can farm Ubers with like a level 20 character. Smite is never interrupted as well. This is huge. Again, as soon as you start smiting with fanaticism, you have just basically you're going to proc life tap right away and just keep replenishing your health versus like swinging away and missing a lot. And finally, smite works with life tap, crushing blow, and open wounds, but doesn't work with deadly strike. So it's almost like they intended the Smiter to be the ultimate Uber farming character. You stack some crushing blow, I guess a source of open wounds if you have some better gear, but I mean, even early on, you don't really need that. You just stack crushing blow with some source of life tap with never missing and not being interrupted. And once you proc life tap, you just cannot die with a Smiter, and it's the reason why it is such an effective character for farming Ubers. There is a lot of different ways to build a successful Smiter, but it all boils down to 3 key components that are centered around the build. 1 is a source of life tap, so whether you're achieving that through charges like on a life tap wand or Marowak boots for kind of a more budget build, or you're getting it from chance to cast on striking from items like Dracul's Grasp Gloves or the Exile Rumored in a Paladin Shield, you want to have some sort of life tap on striking. You combine that with any form of crushing blow, so whether, again, a budget smiter using Black Rumored and like a flail, or more expensive gear like G-Face or Goblin Toes or whatever, you want to be stacking crushing blow with that life tap. And then finally, good resistances. So whether this is early on with like a perfect diamond paladin shield, or proccing fade from treachery, or doing stuff like using salvation temporarily on Uber Mephisto before you proc life tap and then switching to fanaticism. And then also sources of lightning absorb on your gear, mostly again for Uber Mephisto, so stuff like T-Gods or Wisp Projector. You combine all 3 of these together, so life tap, crushing blow, and then good resistances, and you have the successful formula for farming organs and torches in Diablo 2 with the Smiter. Spot number 2 on my list goes to none other than the Hammerdin, a second paladin build, but I had to include this build on my list for the top meta characters in Diablo 2. Honestly, you probably have seen this in numerous bot games on Battle.net. That is because it is the ultimate damage dealing and tank character in the game. You achieve the tankiness through a high life pool, maximum block, and then just tons of damage from your magic hammers. There's hardly any magic minions in the game outside of the key common farming areas of the ancient tunnels and bill runs, and it's only on bill run number 2 that you're going to run into magic minions, which you can kind of avoid that with either teammates or going down to players 1 and Holy Bolt and having your mercenary tank damage in single player, but there is ways around it. But this character can farm almost anywhere. It's really hard to die, and he just crushes everything on the highest player's difficulty setting, and also stack a lot of magic find. So it really is the ultimate overall magic finding build in the game. There is numerous ways to build a Hammerdin and almost too many gear choices to go over, so I really just want to talk about the kind of 2 common themes associated with the build. One is a 75 FCR setup and the other is 125 FCR setup. 125 is probably the most preferred spec, although it does require some more specific gear. It's very simple to reach 75 FCR on your standard Hammerdin. You can get 40 from Hodo and then like 20 from your gloves, 20 from your belt, boom, you're done, right? But getting 125 can be a little bit more challenging. It requires items like a 35 FCR Spirit, 210 FCR Amulet or an FCR Ring, a Rax, Mage Fist, Hodo, just a lot of other additional FCR, but it is definitely the most preferred spec because you can teleport faster, sling more hammers, and ultimately deal more damage. But the 4 components that you want to worry about the build is Max Vita, outside of enough dexterity to get max block, and then just maxing Blessed Hammer and all of its synergies and maxing concentration, and then all of your remaining points go into Holy Shield to help you achieve that high max block. And then you just Tele Stomp mobs, switch from teleport to concentration, sling your hammers around, kill everything, check for your loot, and then continue going on. But that is why this character had to make my list for the top meta build. It's super tanky, deals tons of damage, and almost has no immunities that it has to worry about in the game. Number 3 on my list is a little bit more of a niche character, but I wanted to include it because it is the standard god tier meta for magic finding, single player, not a Battle.net, and that is the Pitzerker or Pindelzerker. You have probably seen this character used a lot on streamers that are doing the Holy Grail, and that is because for TC87 unique hunting specifically, it is the number 1 in-slot choice period because it can stack tons of MF and take advantage of the skill item find. So every successful kill that you get on like Pindle or a champion or a boss pack in a level 85 area like the Pits, you get a second shot at getting more loot from using item find. Now it isn't a 100% chance of recovering an item with the skill item find, but it's still a lot better and a lot more efficient than farming with any other character in the game. And that's why I wanted to include it on this list, despite it being primarily a single player oriented character as opposed to you guys that like playing on Battle.net. As far as setting up your Pitzerker, there's a lot of different variability, but there's really 3 common themes that you want to make sure that you have covered for this build, and then anything else you just basically substitute the best gear that you have at the time. But the number 1 thing you want to do is avoid any source of cold damage on your character. So you don't want to use an item like Ravenfrost to avoid being frozen. You'd rather use an item like Triangles, the belt, instead. The reason why you want to avoid cold damage is because you don't want to shatter enemy corpses, because any shattered boss or champion pack, you're not going to be able to use the item find skill to redeem your chance of getting another item slot. So any cold damage you want to avoid. The second character spec you want to aim for with this build is achieving 105 FCR. It's actually a lot easier to do than what you would think because you can dual wield items with a barbarian. So if you have Enigma on the offhand, you can carry something like 2 Whiz Spikes and then an amulet that gives you a little bit of additional FCR, and then boom, you have 105 FCR, no problem. The third aspect of building any successful Pitzerker is maximizing your damage while still maintaining a really high amount of MF. And how do you achieve this? Well, it's really through the skill Berserk. So you want to convert any of your physical damage to magic damage. So usually you'll wield Grief on the main hand, and then every other item slot on your Pitzerker or Pindelzerker is about stacking as much MF as possible. So you can carry an item like a 6-isted Faceblade on the offhand, dual Perfect Topaz IK helmet, Perfect Topaz Shaco, Champ Shaco, 7 MF Small Charms, Enigma, You get the idea, just stacking as much MF as you possibly can and then using Grief on the main hand and Berserk as your source of damage. But it is by far the most efficient character if you're solely trying to magic find TC87 uniques in the game, and that is why it earned a spot on my list of 5 meta builds in D2. The next character on my list belongs to the Javazon. She is one of the most popular characters in Diablo 2, and for a lot of good reasons. She has amazing AoE, fast clear speed, and can kill any endgame boss quicker than any other build in Diablo 2. Charge Strike absolutely obliterates Hell Diablo and Hell Baal. However, there are a few disadvantages associated with this build. One, the gear is very expensive. You're looking at Griffins, Enigma, probably Infinity on your Mercenary is absolutely mandatory. Very expensive gear to get the most out of this build. Second, her FCR breakpoints are brutal. So you're going to have kind of a juggling act between balancing damage, MF, and trying to get a decent FCR breakpoint to effectively teleport around and magic find with this build. And finally, resistances are very difficult to stack. You're going to need like insane boots and rings and charms to try and make up for the lack of resistances if you're using Enigma or something like a J mod for a shield. So it's just a very difficult character to get everything correctly in terms of damage, resistances, and total percent MF. Like every other character on this list, there's a lot of variability in terms of the gear that you use with the Javazon specifically. So I just want to hit home 2 key points about this build. One is that you definitely want to try and maximize the amount of minus enemy lightning resistance that you have on your characters. So Griffins, lightning facets, Infinity on your Mercenary is absolutely mandatory to deal with lightning immunities. You want to stack as much minus lightning res as you possibly can for damage output. The second point that I want to touch on is the balancing act with the Javazon and gearing her. So if you're using Enigma, you're going to struggle with your FCR and resistances. If you're using another body armor like Chains of Honor, you don't have to worry about FCR and your resistances will be capped, but you'll lose mobility. So if you're the type of person that likes playing with a Sorceress, you probably want to go with Enigma for repositioning your Mercenary and getting around, but it is a very difficult balancing act with your gear. But with that being said, once you do get that gear the way that you want it to, she is amazing for clear speed and a great magic finding character. And that is why I put her at number 4 on my list of the top 5 meta builds in D2. Which brings us to the final spot on my list of the top 5 meta builds in Diablo 2. I am giving this slot to the Blizzard Sorceress. She is the number 1 most common spec at the start of any ladder in Diablo 2. She's amazing for magic find early on because her Blizzard does a lot of damage when the synergies are maxed, and her cold mastery reduces the cold resistance of monsters. So she can effectively farm Indariel, Moat Trick Mephisto early on. She can farm Pindle and also farm the Ancient Tunnels, which is a level 85 area that hardly spawns any cold immunes and can drop any item in the game. So it is literally the best character to magic find early on with. And with that being said, with top tier gear, she can actually farm anywhere no problem because her Mercenary can handle any cold immune while you static it down instantly to half health. So she's not just restricted to farming the Ancient Tunnels only. I think that's a common misconception with the Blizzard Sorcerers. Really powerful gear. You can farm Chaos Sanctuary, Veil running, and Crushed Travincle for gold finding or high rune farming. There's a lot of areas that she can farm, and that is why she was included on this list for a meta build. There's a lot of different ways you can build a Blizzard Sorceress. It really depends on how much percent MF and how much damage you want to stack. Typically, your 3-piece tile set is kind of your go-to meta setup, and if you want more damage, you can use Desfathom. If you want a little bit less damage but more MF, you can use Aussie. And then you can mix and match MF small charms and skillers depending on, again, how much percent MF and damage you want, depending on the player's difficulty and your magic finding goals. It is, however, important to make sure that you're not overdoing it with the amount of points you put into Cold Mastery, and that is because you can only bring enemy monsters down to minus 100 cold res. So again, it's going to depend on where you're farming. But typically, like Mephisto himself, he has 75 cold res, so that's the only time that I would recommend putting in enough points to get minus 175 cold res. Any regular monster in D2 is never going to have that much cold res, so usually minus 100 or 17 points is enough to bring them down to close to minus 100. Again, you're going to want to tailor your cold mastery depending on where you're farming specifically with this build, but she can do everything from low budget early on MFing to get your gear to top tier high efficiency MF magic fighting, and she is one of the best MF characters in the game. and that is why I awarded her a spot on this list of the top 5 meta builds in Diablo 2. Well guys, there you have it. That wraps up my list for the top 5 meta builds in Diablo 2. I know it was a long video with a lot of stuff to cover, but hopefully you guys enjoyed it. If you could throw a like on it, share it, and even consider subscribing if you're new to my channel. I post new weekly content and stream on Twitch on a consistent basis. Again, link for my Twitch is in the description below. But appreciate any subs or follows. Again, the support means a lot, and I'll see you guys on my next video or live stream. Peace out.